I might be a bit of a crappy friend at the time that I'm working on the thing. That's, I remember probably it was season 4 of The Americans over the Christmas break, and I was somebody's guest for Christmas, and I was like the worst house guest you could ever ask for. I showed up at their house like without any presents on Christmas Eve. There were kids in the house. I showed up empty-handed. You can imagine it. I don't even know if I brought a bottle of wine. And I was like just really depressed. There's part of me that I didn't want to completely leave that. I didn't want to let it go. I didn't want to put it down completely. I wanted to make sure keep it was there, because it was, I think, maybe we were splitting an episode where the shit's really hitting the fan for Martha right before the Christmas break and right after it. So I wanted to keep the box of tricks sort of close to me. So yeah, terrible house guest.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Alison Wright is an actor. She sat down with me at an outdoor cafe on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process?
It's never the same. It's always so vastly different, the amount of information that I have in that moment. I ideally would love to have the whole play on nice fresh white paper that I can start with, or if it's a TV show, like more than one episode. That's never happened to me. I've never had a whole chunk of episodes of information. It's always so different, and the amount of time that I have to work is so different. So that's a tricky one to answer, but let's say in general, once I have a script in front of me, I like to read it without focusing too much on my character. I like to try and get a grasp of the story and what it is, and therefore how I fit into it. I like to try and not focus too much on my character right away, so I'm not getting any ideas too quickly.
That's got to be hard.
It is, because you've usually auditioned, so you've already got your take on it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm like, but that was just my first take. That was whatever I did for the audition. I don't want to... So oftentimes when I'm looking at the script, I'm like, shit, I know too much already. I wish I didn't know about this audition that I've already done and how I did it then, because I don't want to lock into that.
Right. Then you have once you get an establishment of the world, what is your first entry into this character? Like, some people, they are outside in people, and they want to picture what, are you like that, or do you start to do the research?
It's reading again, reading the whole thing, the whole thing over and over and over. And then it's I'm definitely into research. I love research. I love reading books that are anything to do with, if it's a specific time period. Like there's 2 projects that I did that were specifically Hollywood. One was like more 40s, 50s, and one was 60s. And there are great books that I read all about the golden age of Hollywood, just to see what the world was. Or on The Americans, I immediately went to read about working in the FBI. What is it like to work in an FBI office? What is the relationship between the FBI and the CIA? Because I didn't know that as a person, I didn't know. And if those 2 bureaus were interacting with each other, which my character was, I had to understand what's the chain of command. Yeah. So the logistics of the world that Martha lived in The Americans, to figure out when you've got some information, when you've got a pile of paper that's information that she ends up doing things with, I need to know where should that go? Who would see that? Who would know that I was seeing it? So the framework of the world. I need to understand the framework, which is true for any job, actually. It's a good way to put it. The framework of the world that they live in. The caste system, if you like, of the world, the information that they live in, and how they live it, and where they are inside of it.
But really, tell me, if you didn't do that, if someone did not understand the world and they just started to go into, I mean, how much are we really losing in that? And can someone make the case that focusing just on the person and only on the inner life or whatever and not understanding anything else might also be a very valid way of doing it? And I mean, can you imagine, are we getting a different actual structure of this character?
Well, nobody just exists in their own
That's right.
orbit in the
That's
world, right? You and I are existing
That's right.
in a
and we're
hierarchy
affected by
right
our
now.
environments. Yes.
And just knowing those things affect how I speak to you versus how I speak to this
that's great.
person.
Yes.
And
Yes,
knowing
of course.
the power structure
Yeah.
of who's the most important person in the room. I have to know that. I have to know who I need to be nicer to for whatever reason. Who can make decisions that kind of affect me, like being my boss or something. You know all these things and you know them in your own, like, you know, you look at any, stick 5 people in a room, like go into a room where they're real people. There's a power structure there.
That's right. Where they sit.
And they all know it too. They each know it.
Yeah.
And as the viewer, if they've created a really specific world, I can see it too. And I can see it by who's sitting where, who gives who eye contact when they talk, who doesn't bother giving eye contact when they talk, who gives a more polite explanation, who's offhand. That's all. That's the power dynamic, which will feed into good writing of a story.
But have you ever been with a director who, in that, it's a beautiful example what you just said there. The idea of everybody understanding their character's place in that room when they sit down and their power structure. This, I can imagine this not mattering to a director. You know what I mean? Like they're dealing with other things. They're dealing with blocking with a capital B, and it's just about like placement for the camera. And one actor is in a whole other realm that wouldn't exist in this power structure, and it's off. And you're like, why is the director not telling that person that they're in another scene right now? And because you're perceptive, I could tell. Like, what do you do in that situation? Have you ever been in that situation? First off, I'm sure you have.
Yeah. I mean, it's not ideal, right? It's not. It's. I think, you know, you can't control what anyone else is doing. You can only control what you're doing, and.
But do you speak up?
If you can think of how to in a helpful way, yes. Or if ideally there's time to be like, ideally the director is going to say, have a little chat about the scene before you start and make sure everyone's on the same page about what's happening in the scene and what the dynamics need to be. And when you start to try and block it, ideally there's a little time to block it and see how you want to move it around. Sometimes I've been on jobs in the Americans, I remember, where they would sort of be like, okay, like, where do you think you guys are? What do you think, you know? And they would sort of let us go through maybe what we thought it might be, rather than going, okay, right, you start here and you start here. There can be value in that too, in a director being very specific. If they've really done their homework and they really know what it is and they've got a real clear picture of what it is, great, I would welcome that, yes. Because ideally the director knows more than anybody.
Right.
And they've thought about all the different ways it could be.
Yeah.
But that is not always the case.
Yeah.
And if the job gets bigger and bigger and it's a huge scene with tons of, not only tons of characters, but perhaps there's, you know, there needs to be lots of camera movement and there's lots going on and it's a big thing, it's hard for them to get all those beats. But ideally you want your director to have thought about it all and have thought, you know, this is the best way to do it, let's try it like this, but still be open to an actor who's done their homework and maybe has a valid idea too.
Yes.
Because we're supposed to be the captains of our characters, right? We're supposed to know the most about our characters each and show up and having done our homework too.
Justine Loop is an actor that was on the show a couple weeks ago, and she showed me the way she breaks down her dialogue and uses like hieroglyphics to illustrate to her the thought that her character has that produces the next line.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you talk about that you, maybe not with hieroglyphics, but that's kind of the way you work. You deal with the thought the character is having that produces the line. I don't know why more actors haven't talked about this as a possible way of doing it. I see the connections between the both of your work, meaning it's exceptional. And I'm not saying that everybody else that doesn't do this is not exceptional, but I'm saying that it's exceptional in another way. It feels totally organic when you talk, with no residue of ink. You know, you can't see the written word. It feels like it's coming from another place, which to me means the thought of the character, like we are doing in real life when we're talking.
Call me crazy, but I thought that was what the job was.
Well, so,
I thought that's what we're supposed to do.
This is my first question. Where did you come up with that? Were you trained in that?
No. I mean, I have to know what I'm saying. I have to know why I'm saying it. I have to, when I'm looking at a page of my dialogue and I'm going through the lines, the next line, if I don't know where it comes from, I have to figure out what has she thought that's making her say that, or what does she want that's making her say that.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I can't go back in the dialogue and see there's nothing that connects that, where is that thought coming from, then I'll make a decision about trying and come up with lots of options, keep it flexible, don't nail anything down about why would she be saying that. Then I look, okay, who's she talking to? Let's go through their part in the script, see who they are. What does she want from them or need from them, or why is, I have to know why I'm saying what I'm saying. We know why we say. And if I have to understand, I have to really understand the words that I'm saying and why and what I want them to do. Because you can say a sentence and want a million different reactions from it.
I think maybe people that are listening are thinking, yeah, that's what we do. But it's not, because I think you cut yourself off if you start to think about the line by itself before the thought. You might add the thought in later, but you've already got this foundation of something else besides the thought. And I think what you're saying is you really work on the thought first. Justine also said it helps with memorization too.
Oh yeah, if there's no thread to connect, that's when you got bad writing. When you can't, I'm like, how do I get into that next paragraph? Where's that coming from? It's coming out of nowhere. I can't connect the thought that would take from A to B. There's no connection. And if you do have to do a lot of mental gymnastics as an actor, it's a problem.
Yes.
I mean, you can do it. I can, spend my whole weekend off between shooting, figuring out why is she saying that then, and then back to that and that. What does that mean? Because your thoughts make up your personality, right? The way someone thinks, then you're finding a whole person from that. And if you do all this mental gymnastics to figure out a way that you can explain it in your head, then you get to work and you check with the writer and they're like, oh shit, sorry, yeah, that was just a bit of an old draft in there. You have no idea how often that happens.
Oh my God.
I've just spent the whole weekend figuring that out. I've broken some of my brain. And it was just a mistake on your part. Because I think what's in the script, I think that they've really taken their time, and that's
it's
right.
Gospel, right?
Yes,
you have to treat it as gospel.
It's the Bible. It's the blueprint. It's the most important part of the job. It's the most important part of the whole production, that script.
Yeah. So what about just terrible writing, though. Never mind that, because you were talking about that. You're on a good show. These are good writers. Do you have to find the way, in that similar way, even when you know it's bad writing? Because there's always bad writing, right?
Yes. Yeah, I do. For me, I'm not sure if I don't think it's fulfilling if I don't do that, because then I feel like I'm just a talking head.
Yes.
Standing there and saying the lines.
Yes.
That, and I can tell when I watch stuff and what someone's saying as it comes out of their mouth doesn't even make sense. I'm like, how can you don't hear that? That doesn't make sense what you're saying? Let's listen to what you're saying. What is it that you mean by what you're saying? I have to figure out a way for it to make sense, yeah. It's more fun like that. It's, without tying yourself in knots. There's no point in doing that if the writing is bad, but I have to deliver a performance. I have to provide a person that seems real and is really having an experience, and whatever that may be in the scene. I have to make a way to make it real for me, and if it's real for me, it'll be real for the audience, I think.
Do you ever see other actors struggling and know that they would be helped by this kind of way of doing it? Did you ever want to just show them?
Just be like, hey, try learning the lines. Try that. Be great. Try doing some homework. Yeah. I got this great idea. Yeah. Do some homework.
But this specifically, though, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm sure that there's not a lot of people that actually do this, what you're talking about, in quite this way. Because they think there's a right way to say this line, and they just got to figure it out. And it's disconnected. Now, maybe sometimes just the way they are, we're not confronted with that brick wall of understanding that they're not connecting to the thought. Because it's an illusion and we get it.
Because maybe they're so handsome or something. You don't notice.
Or the way their face moves. With certain things, they look like they're coming up with those lines right then, and they get by, and that's fine. But I'm sure that there's some people that get locked into this really strict, solid way of doing it, quote, right, and it's lost all connection to, purpose of what the person is saying, and this life is gone.
Well, yeah, I suppose it would be like maybe a bit of an emptier result, I think. It's just, maybe it's because it's what I was interested in acting in the first place. It was more the psychology of it, more the, behavior, I suppose. That was more of it was Stanislavski and then Lee Strasberg and the method that got me interested, which is a more psychological approach. Yeah. And because it's more psychological in the sense that it's personal, using your own experiences, they are specific.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Lee Strasberg Institute where you went. So what was that? Did you come to America to go there?
I did, yeah.
Why did you pick there? Aren't there wonderful schools where you were? There are.
Not that teach the method.
Oh, yes, that's right. No.
And it was, I was doing performing arts. I'd never really had, I never had any acting in school. There was no programs or classes or anything that I did. But I'd done singing and dancing since I was little. And I loved musicals. So I was doing performing arts, and there was a tiny little segment at the end of our 2 years for acting. And I learned there about Stanislavski, which then learned about the method. And then somehow, before the age of computers, I managed to look up to see, God knows how I did that. I don't know how I would get information. Isn't that funny? I remember, did I send a telegram?
I looked at my school in this giant book of schools.
Book of schools, there you go. That must have been it. Yeah, I have no idea how I did that. And I saw there was a school in New York and one in LA. And I came to New York on a little holiday with a friend of mine and went down to the school to check it out, see what it was, and they let me audition on the spot.
Wow.
And that was that.
Wow.
And then I just had to go home and beg my mom and dad to.
And what was that like? Go. Did they say yes? Were they?
They didn't want me to. They didn't want me to go, but I suppose I whined and moaned and sulked, whatever. And then they, got a big loan, and
It's amazing.
I came here. Yeah.
What was that experience like? Did you get what you thought you would get from that school?
Well, I mean, I was 21.
Yeah.
Moved to New York City from a very sheltered existence in the north of England. I got a lot of things, life.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge, as you would imagine for anybody. It was great. I don't know how much you can take in at 21 when you're also taking in New York City and finally moving away from home. But it was fantastic and, life-changing for me to come out here. My world really opened up. It had been pretty narrow before then, so it was great. Spent probably far too much time going out and having a good time.
Yeah.
Rather than, studying. Just yeah.
As one would do.
Yeah.
Are you still using those tools that you got there today?
I think I am in a way that they've just all melded in my mind to how I approach work, but not specifically. I'm not sitting down and doing any exercises. I'm not. There's a couple of exercises that they have. I forget what the name of it is, but maybe it's just sensory stuff where you can, like music.
Yeah.
Certain piece of music that boom.
Yeah.
Like if I need to get really upset really quickly, I can do that. But I think I've integrated the lessons from that school so much into myself, my life, that I'm doing it not consciously.
Yeah.
And also the lessons taught me how to connect to my imagination. They taught me how to really open my imagination and use it specifically to get any sort of feelings. I think that's what the method is really about. It's about something that you can use if what's on the page doesn't just do it for you. If what's on the page doesn't give you everything you need, here are some little tricks to access things. And I think the more you practice accessing things from your own life or from your imagination that are made up, just managing to imagine yourself in someone else's position, that muscle grows and grows, and then it's just part of how you work.
So let's jump ahead here to auditioning for Reuben Santiago Hudson, who's been on the show. But I wanted to ask him about, as an actor, how he ran auditions. And he was open about that, about how it's important for him to make people feel comfortable. I mean, was he there on your first audition?
Yes.
What was that like, him on the other side of the table? Was there even a table?
There was.
Oh, man, I'm so disappointed. He couldn't get rid of the cliche table? What is this guy doing? I mean, come on.
Now I'm struggling to... I remember the second one, because I remember the callback. Chuck was there. I read with Chuck, and I remember Reuben and Oscar was there, and I feel like, probably maybe Heidi and Jordan were there too, casting directors from the public. The first one, I can't remember if it was just Reuben and Heidi. I can't remember if there were less people.
Wait, let's back up. This is Shakespeare. You've never done Shakespeare. You're going into a Shakespeare audition. You must have been prepared out of your mind.
Shakespeare, never done it. I had to do a lot of work for that audition because I'd never done it before. Terrified, very nervous. And I had worked with Seth Barish at the Barrow Group, his wonderful teacher of mine, it got away from me. Meaning sometimes it's like it's a train and it's just a little bit in front of you. And it took off sort of before I managed to properly get on the train. So because I wasn't as calm as I would have liked to have been, which, that happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was nervous. I was pretty upset with myself when I came out of that first audition, I remember.
You thought that was it?
Yeah.
not going to get anything.
I thought I'd fucked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was crying. Not like a maniac in the hallway, but privately, gently to myself,
Yeah.
berating myself.
I mean, I wonder how many people have cried after auditions that they eventually got the role for. I bet you there's a lot.
Maybe. Yeah.
So you get called back.
Yes.
Was that different in terms of the structure of the audition? I mean, is he having you read with people at that point?
There were more people at the callback.
People that had already been cast?
No, like Oscar Eustace from the public was behind the table. And the actor who would play Othello was reading with me. And it was also, for the callback, it was a huge 5-page scene, which is the most important scene that Emilia has in the whole play, where, you know, she walks in and finds Desdemona's dead, and then she realizes, oh shit, Othello's done it, and oh shit, now he's going to kill me. So there are stakes in that callback scene. I was like, holy shit, that's basically like I'm just auditioning with the whole play for the callback. And it went well. Like, I worked really, really hard on it because I had to. You have to understand what you're saying in Shakespeare, because it's hard enough already for the audience. And when the actor doesn't know, you're lost in the audience. It's hard enough already, the language. It's different for our ears. You need an actor to really... If the actor knows what they're saying, the audience can. And if they don't, forget it, you're lost. And if you're lost in Shakespeare, you know... Let me just go to sleep instead. That's
right.
Too difficult. It's too long otherwise.
That's right.
So it was the most work I've probably put in ever for an audition, definitely, and for the job. Yeah, because I had a lot of catching up to do.
So what were rehearsals like for Shakespeare that you'd never done? So here you are, you got the role, now you're rehearsing Shakespeare. And tell me about Reuben as a director during rehearsal time.
I felt like there was a lot of freedom in the room. We were also at a time where there was interest, and Reuben spoke about this from the very beginning, where there was interest in not just ignoring the women in a story anymore, which is often done in Shakespeare, right? It was at a time where there was more interest in looking at what happened, how badly done by all of the women are in Othello, not just Desdemona. So he empowered us, Heather Lind and myself, with that sort of. So it didn't feel I'd never done it before, right? I'd never done the play before either. But it felt like there was room for a fresher look at it. Yeah. And perhaps me having never done it before, there was, by the time we got to the end of the experience, or like a good way through it, a lot of the actors who were very familiar with the play would be like, I never saw Emilia this way before. And it could be because the place we're at in the world at that time, that we're just willing to look at things a bit differently. But I really think that by the time we got to that scene when Emilia comes in and finds Desdemona dead, it crept up on me so quickly. When Reuben roughly started to block out roughly, you go through, get a rough sort of shape of the whole thing before you start diving into specifics. I remember thinking, holy shit, we're here already. Oh my God. Like on Thursday, we're going to be in that scene. Shit. I felt like I had to know it already before that day, because he was, what he did was like, okay, let's get up on your feet. Let's see what you got. So what, you want me to make up? What? You're not going to tell me? So I was like,
you were
holy
worried
shit.
about having to make decisions that were going to lock you in.
Yes, because that's what we've been doing so far. He'd be like, let's just get it up on its feet. Like with the other scenes that I'd all been sitting watching, that's how he'd been working. So I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to do something when we start to block this.
But what did you need for yourself before you can do that?
I needed to understand what was happening in the scene.
Yeah. So
I needed to understand all the emotional beats.
You hadn't gotten to that scene yet in your mind.
Yeah. I needed to understand. You need to understand what's happening to a person emotionally to decide if am I going to want to run over there on that line. And I need to know that already because you're sort of blocking it because there was also 8 other people in the scene, so you could understand wanting to get a shape. But if I don't know what's happening in the scene yet, inside of the person, I don't know where I'm going to want to move or when I'm going to want to move.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do like a massive amount of homework before that day, and Reuben really gave me the space and the freedom to sort of explore that scene. And Emilia's dealing with all the different men in the room and the different levels of threat from them, and it ended up having a lot of breathing room, that scene did. But I had to be prepared before we started with that.
Can I just cut ahead to me being in the park, seeing this, and being blown away by that moment? Okay? And that's what happened. I mean, I had, and Othello was one of those plays that I kind of knew, having seen a bunch of productions, and never had a moment like that. And you got good notices for this play, didn't you? I think you were talked about more than anybody else. So did this give you this urge to do more Shakespeare? Or was it like never again?
Yes, no,
Oh,
yes.
yeah?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was loads of work, but I like working. I like working hard. I like just reading that script day in, day out. And there was so much to learn and decipher and decode with Othello. And the public has a great support team of people and writers and down there that literally lecture on Shakespeare 24/7, and that's their job, who really were there as great source material to help out. No, I loved it. I loved it. And working in the park, going to work every day in the park.
I was going to say, what was that like? Do you have any raccoon stories?
Oh, yeah, they're cute as little things. I'm obsessed with raccoons now. Gorgeous. They would walk across the stage all the time. It was about the same time usually every night. I guess it's, related to when the sun goes down. And there were some babies there. There was a mommy and daddy, and there was 3 little babies. But it would be a little bit scary because there was a time when I was waiting for an entrance. Obviously, it's a big dress, and we have to pick the dresses up. And they were there too. And it's like, well, shit, am I going to go or are you going to go, babe? It's like, because you're cute and everything, but if you get around my ankles, I'll probably get a bit scared, might be a bit gross with your weird little strange hands. So it was, and the people at the public were always like, don't touch them. I know that you think they're cute, but don't touch them. Don't feed them. Don't make friends with them.
Pretty soon they're going to have a raccoon, special person that deals with the raccoons.
A raccoon wrangler?
Wrangler, or to tell you actors how to handle the raccoons.
They're so cute. Though. It's their home. I love it. Typical ballsy New Yorkers. They're like, I'm going across the stage right now.
Was it fun to be outside and doing this? Or besides raccoon, was it annoying to just be in the elements, or was that all part of it?
It's just part of it. It was annoying when it started to rain and we had to stop.
Yeah.
And then we'd start again, and then if I can start to rain again, one time we stopped 2 times, and it's like, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? What's the brilliant side of that is seeing all these audience members. They've come back. They came back the first time, and oh my God, they came back the second time after the second stop.
I love that.
That's pretty amazing.
It's so special.
And to be a part of the city like that.
Yes.
I really feel like I'm part of the city now because I did that.
Yeah.
I really do. And there are lots of, you're wearing like a 25-pound dress and you're sweating, and then you're covered in rain and it's velvet and you're soaked in water also. But it's brilliant. It's so brilliant to be outside in the elements and under the stars, and it's the best. It's the best. So cool. I can't wait to do it again. I pray to God I hope to get to do it again.
Did you feel like a palpable change in your approach to Martha on The Americans as the seasons go on? Like having the ability to play a character multi-seasons, which I think this was the first time you were able to do that, right? And just going into season 4 after having 3 seasons. Talk to me about the difference in just being able to wrap your arms around this person and or even your approach to every script that you're getting, knowing this character so well now, more than anybody, maybe even more than the writers would at this point. and how that affected going into that season, which was a great season for you.
Well, I never had the security of thinking I was going to be alive for a whole season. I never knew that.
You thought your number was up all
always
the
the
time.
feeling that the axe could drop at any moment. And it did on many characters, you know. I wasn't hired as a regular. Martha was never supposed to be what she ended up being. The pilot was my first television job, so I didn't have anything else to compare it to. I was one episode at a time until season 2, and then as we went on, I never knew when they were going to kill me or what the plan was. So I would literally scan through and like,
am I dead? Am I dead today?
I'm not dead, still alive, still alive. So
That's
it
funny.
just, it got, but it, I suppose how it progressed for me. So I never had that security. So it wasn't like that. I never was let in on the plan for the character. So I didn't have that knowledge either to wrap my arms around. But it just got more fun to play. It's got more and more fun to play because I know the longer she's invested in this, it's going to come crashing down at some point. It's got to. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So let's just invest more all the way along.
Yeah.
It was just more and more fun to have more layers and to be more concerned about the people at the office that she's betraying or who she needs to lie to. And, oh my God, is this guy never going to commit more and give me more? Or maybe that she's just more in love with him. It was just more and more things to play with, more fun to have.
So this must have been why you have so much backstory when things do start to fall apart, that you can just get right into it.
It's all worked out already beforehand. Yeah. All, you know, all they told me at the beginning was from the audition, the wonderful audition that I had, actually, maybe the best audition that I've had, with Gavin O'Connor, who directed the pilot.
Why was it so good?
It was really collaborative, and we improv'd.
Huh.
You know, did the scene, and then Gavin and Joe were like, okay, let's do one like, show me like she's really in love with him. And when you say this line that you're talking about somebody being tall and handsome, think about him and how tall and handsome he is. And so we just improv'd, and it was so fun, and it was great, and they were just laughing. We had a great time, and I remember walking out thinking, shit, that was a good audition. No matter what, that was a good audition. That felt like fun. I got to do some acting.
Are you listening, directors?
Right? Yeah.
I mean, come on.
It
So
was
just you coming alive and sparking your process, your imagination.
giving me some direction.
Yeah.
Giving me some direction that's actable.
Yes.
Not all direction is actable. Like sometimes they tell you things and you're like, that's like a
You have to
notion
translate it
rather
for
than...
you. Yeah, for yourself, yeah.
Yeah, like it's a big idea. And I get it, it's tough. Every actor's different. We all respond to different things. We all want to be explained to and talked to in different ways.
Yeah.
Just like people do. You know, the directors can't get it right for everybody every time. You know, they have a tough job.
Right. But they really should. They really should. That should be part of their job, getting it right for everyone all the time. I mean, how hard is
much
that?
to ask,
I mean,
actually,
come
yeah.
on. I mean, how many people are there per job? Was saying goodbye to Martha hard at that point?
Leaving the character, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, it always is. It always is.
It always is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I suppose unless you hated your character, then you have no feelings. You're not invested at all. It doesn't mean anything. But yeah, I think with Martha, it was hard, but it had been a pretty hard for a few episodes up to it. Mm-hmm. So it had been like a lot of sort of sadness to carry around in your back pocket that whole time. Mm-hmm. Not that you know, I'm taking her home with me to some extent, in that she's always there, like in my little pocket or something. So yeah, it was sad. And I've never actually dared to watch the final season. And not out of vanity because I'm not in it, but that there's something for me about, then I'll know it's really over. Like as if it's still existing somewhere, as long as I don't watch that last season.
I heard you talk about how the creatives behind Snowpiercer gave you like a bunch of descriptions about your character that was really helpful to you, because usually you don't get that. And let me ask you this though. I mean, you were talking about how you need to go through processes before you can say lines, and therefore they're connected to a certain thought. You need to do all this stuff before you can find out where the blocking is in a scene. Otherwise you're just locked in. How could you find these descriptors helpful if they're not, you know what I mean? If they're just handed to you and you haven't gone through the processes that it's almost like a shorthand, I could think of it almost as, because it's not your process of finding that out.
Well, I'll say it's helpful because they told me her personality.
That's what I'm saying, just telling you outright though.
Right.
Without you.
Well, then it's not a mystery, right?
That's right.
In another
that's good.
In another case, I've got the script, I've just got what I do. And I have to figure out the personality by looking at the thoughts and going, okay, what does that mean then? How would they feel about something if that's what they're saying? Then I have to figure out the personality. Just having what you do really doesn't help you at all.
Right.
Because you can just tell me to do that on the day. That's just what I do. But why am I doing it? Who's the person that's doing it? So normally you have to work out, that's the homework, to work out what is the personality.
I see. And so that's almost like a burden, because if you could just
you're making it up, kind of.
You're making it up, right?
They just, which not like out of thin air, but you're creating it so it makes sense. But in this case, they said she's this, and this. And like, okay, if I'm all those things, you can put me in any situation and I know how I'll respond.
I see.
Because I feel like this about this. I'm sanctimonious by nature.
I guess my question is though then, even though that's hard to do, what you have to do in normal situations when you're not given the personality of a person with a bunch of descriptors, even all the other times you have to go through all this stuff, you have to literally make up things. But I guess I want to know is even though you're making up, even if you're not sure that this is actually what was in the mind of the person that created this person, isn't there something, because it's coming from you and all of the burden that you had to go through to find this, isn't there some kind of DNA to that that's different than when somebody just tells you, here's what she is, and you can go in there and do it?
I see what you're saying, and no, because it's still coming through the prism of me. It's still coming through the sieve that is Alison and Alison's life and what she's seen and knows, and the people that she's met. So it's still coming through the same filter, because descriptions, let's see, easily rattled was one, sanctimonious, in love with Mr. Wilford, and rules, highly strong. So they could mean different things to different people.
That's right. It's
and you ask 5 people to show you what highly strung and sanctimonious looks like, they're going to pull from their life and show you what they think it looks like. So it's still coming through me. They just give me a helping hand.
Yes.
I loved it.
And so when you heard that, you're like, your hands are rubbing together.
Yeah, because I also went, oh, hang on, I know that person.
Yeah.
I know that person. Yeah. Oh, okay. I know how she would do that.
Right.
So it was like ding, ding, ding.
Right. And then just being in love with that person is also helpful, because sometimes that's coloring all this stuff.
Yes, because if you're idealizing this thing and da-da-da, like that's all I knew about Martha, that she's really in love with him but trying to hide it at the beginning. That was it. And that's enough to go on. That can feed your whole thing.
Oh, yeah. And it's fun to play that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So even if, anyone in the scene mentions that person,
Yeah.
that's a little jolt that you get just thinking about them.
Yeah.
If anyone says anything against them, I've got an opinion about that too then.
Right.
So it gives you so much to be thinking about
Right.
all the time, or just to know that the character would just know. So even if you've got no lines in a scene, if you know what you know,
Right.
you can have an opinion about it.
And also having to hide it too is also fun. Because you know it, want to show it, but you can't show it.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll show it a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, see, there's tons to play with. If you know what you're what you feel,
Right.
then you know how to think, and then thoughts equal behavior.
Right.
Someone's thinking something, then that's when they're, that's when they move their jacket a certain way before they're feeling something inside.
Right.
Thoughts equal behavior.
Yes. You're going into season 3, shooting season 3 of Snowpiercer. So are you imagining Ruth, many seasons of Ruth and playing Ruth? And what annoyances come up, like having to go to Canada maybe? Is that where you guys shoot? Yeah. Is that an annoyance? But living with her and working it out, is that something that you look forward to? Is it just good to have a job?
Sure, like it's nice to have a job, right? I've worked quite a bit through this last year, so that's been nice. I love Vancouver. It's an incredible place. The nature, the beauty, it takes your breath away. And the mountains, it's just gorgeous. We have a huge cast, a lot of fun people. This year is going to be really different, of course, because I guess we're not going to be able to hang out, and
Right.
it's going to be weird. We shall see. But what I like about Ruth and the story that they've given her, she has a very different journey. She really has a clear arc. She really does. When you look at all the characters and what they go through in season 1, Ruth's arc is very clear and specific. She has a very changed, different. There's a worry that when you're playing a character in something that could go for a long time, that you're just doing the same thing all the time. But Ruth is not. She's not in stasis at all. She's always changing in reaction to Mr. Wilford and the world that they're in. And then when Mr. Wilford shows up and he's not at all what she hoped or expected or thought or believed, she gets to change. So I get to change all throughout the second season. She's figuring out, hang on, this is not right. So she's figuring it all out and is changed by the end of it. And then we begin season 3 in a completely different place. So I'm really lucky that she's been constantly evolving throughout. Maybe more than any other character on the show.
And
So
that
that's
helps.
great.
That
Well, then
helps
you're just
playing
not
that.
doing the same thing all the time.
Right.
I'm a person who's changing.
What do you typically need on a set? Like, I'm talking about ideal situation here. And every time I ask this, I always think, man, I bet you this person has had to adapt their needs over time and may not even be in touch with what they really need anymore because of what they've had to change.
I would say, like, for directors, you can set people up for success, and you can do the opposite to that. It's not always the best ideal thing to scream action at the top of your lungs when you've got a really delicate scene about to happen. It's not necessary. I heard that Clint Eastwood just do it really, really quietly and all right, okay, let's just begin, right? When you're ready. Like, you need, set that tone if you're doing something really small and intimate, because like yelling, and not giving a moment's quiet. If there are some stakes about to happen in the scene, you don't need to do that all the time. If it's just a normal scene, yelling is fine. But if there's some delicacy that needs to be happening, like, let that inform the set. We do need a bit of peace and quiet sometimes before we begin. If we're jumping right into something, you need to get there in your head. So, like, peace. I'm often like this before I start. That's fine if there's noise, but I need that. Sorry, that.
Just telling people.
That means we can't tell. Fingers in the ears. That's what that meant.
Yep.
Just to get silence, because I need to be able to gather my thoughts to begin. Like if we're beginning right away in something that's heavy stakes, silence really helps. The Americans was always a very respectful set for that sort of thing, but it was a small set too, so it's easier to control that. But just to have that's really important. I've noticed I really enjoy if we're doing multiple takes on something. This wouldn't work for everyone, but for me, I would really respond to if a director comes in, is like, that's great, we've got that, okay. Can you now show me this? Can you now try it like this? You know, let's say it's, you know, can you now try, it's tricky. But maybe if they wanted an overall different feeling or an overall intention from me, but I would respond to the challenge of, yeah, that's great, you got that, love that, now show me this.
Yeah.
Because I would personally like to go, oh yeah, I can show you that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't work for every actor.
Right.
But when they come, if they, you know, they've got to be clear. It's helpful if the director is clear, rather. Then if they come in, right, oh, well, I don't really, you know, what do you think? It's like, no.
So even clarity is good, even if it's potentially like that sound you just made is the sound of somebody who's worried about hurting you because something's wrong. So you're saying if they just came out with it,
yeah,
it's so much better than being like, I don't know.
Yeah, because to me that means you don't know. It doesn't sound like they don't want to hurt my feelings. It sounds like you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you want.
Right.
Like, and I want you to know what it is that you want.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe even, you know, a lot of it is about, on the set, the director needs to pretend that they're in control.
Right.
And pretend that they know what they're doing. Ideally, actually know what they're doing. That'd be great. But if
the
not,
second best is to properly
so
pretend.
then we can relax. Like, because if you've got a bunch of actors who are like, oh my God, this guy doesn't know what that ship sinks really fast. And then we lose faith and we lose trust, and then we'll all band together and it won't be good.
So the best actor on the set sometimes is the director pretending like he or she knows.
Maybe. Yeah, and they've got a lot of balls, you know, in the air. They're doing a lot of stuff, but that is part of the job, I think. They've got to be our leader. You know,
I think you mean something different, but I just have to ask this because I remember in film school, Arthur Penn came in and I said, any questions? And I said to Mr. Penn, I'm filming tomorrow, my third year film. What's your advice? And he said, 3 words for you that you need to say to everyone, and you should write them down on a board. The words were, I don't know. It's almost counterintuitive to what you just said, but I think what he meant was that you need to not be rigid.
Yes.
Which is different than what you're saying.
Yes.
Knowing that somebody's in control is different than somebody being willing to take a suggestion from the gaffer about something, right?
Yep.
And being willing to adapt to certain situations and maybe throw away the storyboard once in a while.
I would guess that what he meant was like, I don't know, but that sounds great, let's try it.
Yes.
Or I'm not glued, like I'm not rigidly decided already on what the outcome needs to be.
Right.
Like, because it's tough, you know. I've had situations where I've walked on a set on a show that I was doing for like quite a while as a guest star, and I step in and the director is showing me the blocking. Okay, so you're going to pick up with these books here, and then we'll walk over here, and then on this line, if you put those down there, and then we'll walk through here. I'm like, well, shit, do you want to just do it for me then? What, you might as well do it for me, because like, you know?
Yeah.
And that's awful then, because now I'm not just having to do like the acting, I'm having to remember the blocking that she's decided that may not actually work for me and may make it harder for me.
Okay, though.
Maybe you just have to suck that up sometimes.
Well, I was just going to say, what did you say to that person? Because they might be thinking that's their job to give you very specific, like, unless somebody starts talking to them. It's so weird, though, right? Like, you figured if they were in that position, they would know.
Yeah, and this was an actor.
Oh.
So, yeah, I'm not really sure, but you know what? See, maybe another actor would have appreciated that. But it made me like go, oh shit, you know.
Yeah.
Why don't you just do this scene for me then?
Yeah.
Am I just, you know, what am I, like a hired help? Yes, you are actually, sweetheart. Yes, you are. Do the bloody scene.
Until we get robots to do this,
Yes.
or until we can animate properly, unfortunately, we have to deal with you.
Yeah.
So if you could just say these lines.
Yeah. I'm going to just walk where I tell you to walk, for God's sake. Yeah. But you did say it in an ideal situation. That was the beginning of your question, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And is there any other qualities of a director that are very helpful for you, very appealing?
It helps if you can like be friendly. Yeah.
Seems pretty
Friendly
easy.
and chatty. It's well, you know, it's hard sometimes. You're, you know,
Stress.
I'm like, you know, I'm sometimes got a million things on my mind and I'm worried about a scene, or I think I just fucked up the last one, or, you know, maybe I'm not being the friendliest to everyone around me at all the time because I'm worried about something. So I get it.
And do you, I mean, isn't it true that sometimes if you don't know if you are giving the director what they want, that sometimes that's that energy of mystery or whatever is actually good and can fuel the rest of your work in that production, because you're constantly having this need to satisfy the person, and mystery of not knowing if it's actually coming true. In other words, like they're moving on, so it must be satisfactory, but not knowing totally like, oh my God, Alison, that was amazing. And then because the next time if they're not saying it with so much enthusiasm, you start to think maybe that one wasn't as good as the one where they were.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would be a bit embarrassed if it was like, oh my God, Alison, that was amazing. I don't want to hear that. Like, just let me know. Yeah, we got it. That's great. We can move on. That's fine for me. Like, yeah. Like, yeah.
But the affirmation in some way, subtle, is part of what you're talking about. Is necessary.
Ideally, yeah. But you know, also if you're in a 8-person scene, I'm not going to ask for that. That's crazy to ask for that or to expect it.
Yes.
You know, where there's many parts to a scene and I've listened to when you've spoken to people that are working with Fincher, there are many parts, not just the actor. But like, it was a small scene with just one person or 2 people. Yeah, but you got to get a thicker skin as an actor, it's a strange dichotomy though, right? Because we have to be thick-skinned, yet we're required to be thin-skinned.
Exactly.
So we're being very thin-skinned in the moment, but have I got time to put my thick skin on then before you come over and say something harsh to me? Or I've only got my middle skin on, hang on. Yeah, so it is interesting that we have to be really thin-skinned and then also thick.
Get on your thick skin. Here comes
Right.
your director.
Right. Yeah. Oh, no, I don't need it. Back. No, shit. Take it off. Oh, go again. Oh. Tough gig.
You have had, going back to Othello, you know, you talked about developing a physical reaction in your ear when you had to do that scene because of, I don't know what it was, maybe stress of having to do it, or something that you never felt that before. You basically deafed your ear with worry or something from it, or what is it?
I haven't figured it out yet. No joke. Right before the moment that I was the most terrified to go on, when she's on stage alone and finds the handkerchief, which was the most difficult scene for me. I never feel like I didn't get to a point where I was really, really as comfortable as I would like to be with it. And then all of a sudden it was like I was deaf in my left ear, and I could just hear the blood rushing through it. The most bizarre thing, night after night. And then it would pass by the time I got into the second act, but I don't understand it. I went to the doctor, he couldn't explain it either.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that means you are connecting to some kind of, psychologically, to something in you that is manifesting physically. And So you've had other scenes where you've had to reach an emotional place. I mean, based on what you just said about thick skin, and I mean, how do you deal with the emotional toll long term of this work, or is this something you don't think about?
No, that I don't think about. The Othello Eve thing was different because that was fear.
Right.
That was nothing to do with. It wasn't an emotional scene.
Right.
It was just fear. No, I mean, I might be a bit of a crappy friend at the time that I'm working on the thing. That's, I remember probably it was season 4 of The Americans over the Christmas break. It was when I think it was like the end when she's, leaving and stuff. And I was somebody's guest for Christmas, and I was like the worst house guest you could ever ask for. I showed up at their house like without any presents on Christmas Eve, depressed. There were kids in the house. I showed up empty-handed. Can you imagine it? I don't even know if I brought a bottle of wine. I mean,
and you're cranky.
And I was like just really depressed. And there's part of me that I didn't want to completely leave that. I didn't want to let it go. I didn't want to put it down completely. I wanted to make sure keep it was there, because it was, I think, maybe we were splitting an episode where shit's really hitting the fan for Martha right before the Christmas break and right after it. So I wanted to keep the box of tricks sort of close to me.
Interesting.
So yeah, terrible house guest. But actor friends understand that sort of thing if you're going through it. But that's the only time that it affects my real life.
When you were in school, you didn't even dream of being on the screen. Now you've been on the screen much more than you've been on the stage, and you've also just had a lot of work, and you've done this, and you've, whatever worries your parents had about what choosing this thing are gone. Like you're an actor. Like there's no two ways about it. You're not just getting by. And I just want to know, like, now, looking at the career ahead of you, what would be fulfilling for you? And I'm talking about not just a role, but like what kind of work? And by kind of work, I don't mean medium. But you can answer this in any way you want. But I'm just saying, you were able to take a character like Martha and live with it and carry it over many seasons. And like I said, you took challenges on the stage. And what's the next challenge that you're looking for? What's the next thing that you think would bring even more fulfillment to this work?
I mean, many things. I would like to have a good size role in a play on Broadway. I would like to have a nice character role in a musical. My mom would finally be happy if I did a musical, I think. I would like to do a multicam, because that would feel like theater. I'd like to learn the skill of that. I would like to just do more and more. I don't feel like I've done enough. I've only scratched the surface. I don't have a conservatory education. I barely have any education. There's so much that I don't know. I feel like I've done just a tiny percentage. I've got everything. So I don't know, I hope those are specific enough answers, while at the same time saying I don't think I've done anything. I think everything is left in front of me still.
And do you think, we were talking about...
I also wouldn't mind making some money. I'll just put that out there at any point if anyone's ready.
It helps. You were talking about, like, this wonderful time we're in where a play like Othello could be looked at more from the side of, like, the female roles in it, and how that actually wasn't just a wasn't just lip service to you. It was actually in the work. Like your performance maybe benefited from that viewpoint and from the idea that we are in this time and looking at that stuff. That like I was able to get an experience as an audience member a tangible experience because of what is going on in the world that changed, everybody who's involved with that to bring out those elements, I mean, does this kind of stuff encourage you? Do you see that continuing to happen for women and
Well, I hope it means that women, more female writers, directors, are afforded opportunities to tell more stories. It will be interesting to see what do female characters look like that are actually created by all women. Because you know what, I think they might be different. And that's not to say that I'm bitching about the characters that I've played so far that have all been created by men. But if we haven't seen it yet, we don't know what they will be and what new doors they will open.
Alison Wright, thank you so much. And thank you for meeting me in person here. And I'm just excited that you gave me your time.
Thank you, Peter. As soon as you said there was an igloo, I was in. Never sat in a little igloo like this before.
We are in an igloo.
It's been great.
You didn't think that this would happen last year when you were imagining.
Never.
You weren't thinking of sitting with a strange bald man in an igloo in the middle of Manhattan.
Who knew anything's possible in New York, see?
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.